Hey guys, my name is Eric. I have MAV with me, and today we're going to be doing another Rate My Build episode. Go ahead and roll the intro. Hey guys, thanks for checking out another HatchetCast episode, and today I have MAV with me. He actually was on our podcast recently, and we did a Rate My Build episode with his fighting rifle, and we have been sweating to death here in the heat of Florida.
It is really hot.
I feel like I went through
the swamp.
Yeah, just a swamp.
Big
Metaphorical swamp. I'm soaking wet with sweat. But anyways, hey guys, before we get started, while we're here and sweating, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Also, a great way to help out the channel for free is to share this video with a friend or family member. Anyways, that tit for tat, let's frickin' roll right into it. Mav, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, your build, how long have you had your build?
So my build has changed a lot over the past few years. It started off as a 16, went to a 12.5, and I kind of settled on a 13.9. And then even I went from M-Lock to finally settling on the BCM QRF rail for what is it, Picatinny.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, years ago when I first met and that original rifle you had, and seeing now your main squeeze, which you've been running this rifle pretty much all the time, but you've never really changed
I've ran the barrel and hatchet gas gun match with this.
Yeah.
I've ran a ton of open gyms with that. And this has just been my main staple. I've taken it rucking with me. This thing has been through the ringer, so I love it.
Well, let's go ahead and work from the front of it, and then we'll kind of talk about all the parts that you have on there, and then just your experiences and maybe some things that you would want to improve or that you're just going to keep the same, and I'll talk about some of the things that I thought about it. So
coming into the top, we got a RC2 Mini. When going with a suppressor, I wanted something that's going to really last a long time and have, I'm not too concerned with sound mitigation as I am with flash and disruption. Okay. And I think the RC2 provides a lot of that. I'm running a Steiner A2, that's a full power PEC. And then I got a Modlite OKW. The barrel is gonna be a 13.9 Criterion Core Series barrel.
Now what's your twist rate?
1 and 8. They did send this to me, but I've been running their stuff and paying for it, a while ago. And
for your flash, or for your muzzle device underneath the suppressor, what is it?
It's a Surefire flash hider, 4-prong, yeah.
So why did you go with the 3-prong over maybe like a war comp or something else?
Because if I do decide to shoot without the suppressor, I want as much flash mitigation as possible. So there's nothing really gaining from that besides just traditional flash signature.
So your big thing is signature?
Yeah. I'm trying to approach this as like if we were going to use this in a real world. A brake is great at quelling recoil, but if you look at how a brake lifts the dust up when you're shooting prone, you're going to be spotted really quickly.
Right.
So if we can mitigate as much flash as possible, that's probably the biggest thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
So like I said, the barrel, I'm running a BCM QRF handguard. I really like the lockup system on the BCM rails. I think this is my favorite rail. It's super rigid, doesn't lose zero with an IR device, which is great. And you can throw this thing through anything and it'll be okay.
Nice, nice. The old cheese grater.
The old cheese grater, yeah. And then, I'm just running a basic arrow upper and a ballistic advantage lower, just basic forged components. I try not to get too into the weeds of dropping a lot of dough where I don't need to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, as a baker, I'm sure that's important.
Yeah, as a baker, you're right. And then the only thing I really try to go all out for is going to be barrel, glass, buffer system, and trigger, because those things are going to be really integral to the entirety of the rifle. And also your mount. So if you're running an LPVO, I highly encourage getting a solid mount because this is going to make or break your optic.
Okay.
That's just kind of my philosophy behind the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm running a BCM bolt carrier group and a Vortex Razor. This is the Gen 2E. I have been running this optic for the past 3 years pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And then on top I have a 509T.
Yeah, I mean, before this, you were running an ACOG with a top dot.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I took a break from this, went to the ACOG for a while, and I got to run Eric's 14.5 setup with an ACOG, and it makes me kind of miss it.
Yeah.
What's good about the Razor, though, it's similar to an ACOG where it's very simple, right? Very simple reticle. The reason why I switched away or stepped away from the ACOG is passive aiming can be kind of hard with night vision because of how close the actual RMR is.
Yeah.
And then you're married to whatever BDC that you have. So with this, it uses they have two options for the reticle. It's an MOA or an MRAD or a Mills reticle. This is the MOA, but what's great about it though is that I could just set it and it'll line up everything I need. So I can use it as a BDC and, you know, give myself whatever information I need to.
Nice, nice. What's the mount you're running on this?
Badger Ordnance, their Condition 1 mount. It's in a 1-in-7 height. Okay. So yeah, the optic is pretty tall. And I'm actually running a Co adapter plate for the top. The original Badger riser was pretty thick.
Yeah.
So you have no contact with your chin on the stock. So yeah, this Co plate brings it just enough to where you have a good amount of chin support.
What's the dot you're running?
Holosun 509T. I know. But you know what? It's been running for me, and it's great. The only thing is I'm probably going to change this out because this primary use is for passive aiming. Yeah. And the 509T is not great at passive aiming. Yeah. At least from what I've experienced. Yeah. Under nods.
When you say not great, why? Why is that the case?
I find it really hard to find the dot.
Okay.
And the dot doesn't get dim enough to view under night vision well. It just looks like a blur.
Yeah.
So you can fire off of that, but it's not gonna, if you're trying to maintain as much accountability as possible, it's not really gonna prove anything fruitful.
Okay. Yeah. I know that if you guys are curious about the 509T, we have a enclosed emitters failure video. And the 509T, we were running them on pistols and we had a very consistent failure with them with water and moisture and stuff. So on rifles though, we have seen, there's another, I think Tyler and another couple other guys run the 509T on a rifle and they don't have that experience. So I think it's something with this specific optic on a pistol that just shakes things up.
It could be very well because I run the same optic on my pistol too. Yeah. And I think I'm just like an anomaly where I haven't had any issues with it.
Nice,
so,
nice.
But yeah, man, and then the trigger's a Geisley SSAE.
Nice.
Yep.
What's your charging handle you're running?
Radian Raptor,
okay.
The ambi. That's the only ambi thing I have on the gun. I like it just because it gives me both hand usage to either clear malfunctions or charge the weapon. Yeah. But again, I try to keep it very basic in terms of function and use. Anything else that's going to be pretty bougie is going to be like your, sorry, I used bougie, whatever, Gen Z me. What is it? It's probably the A5 buffer system. Okay. So a lot of guys like to mess around with adjustable gas systems. Yeah. I think that's another failure point. And so I'd rather deal with the gas in the back of the gun where there's not really a lot of moving parts and just try to slow down everything from there and I can adjust from there rather than having that gas system walk on me or just completely fail.
So you're talking about is the fix for an over gas system. Yes. Right. And I mean, this is already pretty well gassed as far as like, you know, how this ran, it was pretty soft. So gassing, I don't think was an issue. And the A5 had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, for sure. It's, so their Criterion's hybrid or core series, sorry, uses the smaller dimension gas block, that's 625 or whatever it is. And yeah, I've always found it to be pleasantly to shoot. Nice. And then with the A5, it just makes it kind of like a sewing machine. Yeah. Actually, I was really surprised because it was having a couple hiccups with the AAC ammo. And I typically run like full powered stuff, like M193 from PMC or their like 62 grain, like green tip, or the only thing I run from AAC is really their 77 grain stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, and I've always noticed it's really easy to shoot.
What are some of the things that you would look to improve, or you're just going to pretty much keep everything
So
the same?
Off the rip, it's going to be probably this mount. I like to keep my light on the opposite side, and I just kind of move my thumb over to the other side. Right. Because I like running my sling as further up as I can get it. Yeah. Back at Open Gym, we did a lot of obstacles, climbing ropes, walls, and things like that. And I always found that if the rifle, the further the sling is, the more control I have over the rifle, versus it just kind of swinging almost like a pendulum. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. And then also, it gives me the ability to wrap my arm into the sling, like an old marksmanship trick. Right. That you can give yourself another supported contact if you want. Right.
So I'm pretty sure Davy Crockett came up with that one.
Hey, it works. Yeah.
So what are the things, is that the only thing, is just your light mount essentially? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the light placement, for me, it does everything I need to. Trying to approach this as almost like a GPR thing, something that can cover anywhere from close to like mid-range shooting. So yeah, and I think a 1-6 pretty much provides as much information as I need for that. And if I were going to choose another optic, I'd probably go back to the 8-cog.
Okay.
That's probably the biggest.
And you ran this also in the Barrel and Hatchet 5.6 gas.
Yeah, I ran the 13.9.
Yeah.
It's basically the only thing I didn't run was the suppressor.
Yeah, so I mean, when I shot this thing, my experiences with it was super, super soft.
Yeah.
The only thing is, obviously, as I'm left-handed,
Yeah.
none of the ambi controls were there.
Wrong.
So I was like,
Wrong-handed
yeah,
only. It's okay.
it's okay, best-handed, Lord bless you. But had all the, no ambi controls, so obviously for left-handed shooters or southpaw shooters, having that ambi stuff really does make a difference.
Sure.
It does help you to go a little bit more efficiently. Super soft. I actually ran it with the suppressor off for the first little bit, and I like to use AAC 55 grain as a gauge, because usually AAC 55 grain specifically and Tula ammo, like the steel case 223, it's usually under gas. So if a gun is able to run that, it's usually like, okay, that's your bottom of the barrel ammo. It's stuff you could find. So if it's running that bottom of the barrel stuff, it's usually going to run everything else, right? So it was able to run that a little bit. It started having some hiccups, so I was having double feeds.
Right.
And that goes from it just not being enough gas from that cartridge, and this gun just being very well optimized for, you know, not letting in a ton of gas, so that way you get a little bit more softer recoil. And so I was having some double feed failures. Now, as soon as we attached the suppressor, that problem went out the window, and it was super pleasant to shoot. And pleasant for me as a southpaw shooter, because if it's super overgassed,
You're gonna get stinging in the
get
face.
gassed out, man.
It's rough.
And so that can also take away from my effectiveness as a shooter, because I'm so gassed out that I'm really not paying attention. Eyes are watering. It's just a miserable experience. And so I can't stay fixated on whatever threat or target I have to engage at the moment. But yeah, man, it was super soft. I always have a big soft spot in my heart for quad rails.
Yes, sir.
So it was really, really neat. Hey guys, so I actually had a video issue with MAV's Rate My Build episode, but I still had a couple of pointers that I wanted to bring across to you guys. I'm actually away from home right now and doing some stuff with another organization, but that's not going to stop me from putting out a video for you guys. So on the tail end of MAV's video, one of the things that he and I were discussing were some of the important things to keep an eye on. And one of those items is your barrel. A lot of people look at them in a way where it's like, hey, you should buy once, cry once, it just lasts forever. And I agree, there are high quality barrels that do last a longer period of time. However, most of your barrels are going to be it needs to be a replenishable item. Like, it will eventually shoot out and then you have to get a new one. And that's just the nature of the beast. So for me, I like to have a couple of barrels on standby, especially if it's a really nice barrel or a really good batch. I obviously shoot Roscoe manufacturing barrels. They're incredible. But one of the things that we noticed, actually MAV told me about it a little bit later on, was he was shooting a group and he was like, dude, my accuracy is really not there. Like, it's like really opening up. And whenever you start shooting a lot and you start getting really intimate with your gun, you know the characteristics of that rifle, what it's supposed to do, what type of ammo you run through it, what type of ammo it likes, and what is a common attribute of the rifle. Now, if you don't shoot very often, it's very hard to diagnose what's wrong because you don't have a lot of familiarity with it. So, you know, MAV, being super familiar with his rifle, came to me and was like, hey, this thing is really opening up. The group is really bad. Is it the ammo? Is it this? And he said, also, I think I might have seen a keyhole. And that is a typical sign of your barrel being worn out. So he actually is going to be getting a new barrel, but if you're going to have, you know, a very solid goal of shooting a lot and training a lot like MAV does, you know, you're going to shoot your barrels out. And honestly, I think it's kind of an accomplishment. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, man, I've been training enough where I shot my barrel out in a good way. You obviously don't want to have it where, you know, after a few thousand rounds it gets shot out. That's a manufacturer issue. But the other thing that we also had was that his rifle was actually beginning to choke out whenever it wasn't running suppressed, when it previously did not do that. So your gas port, you'll actually get some wear and some tear on that, but he also ran that gun suppressed almost all the time. So eventually it gets carboned up and starts to choke out. So you'll have some wear on that gas port area, you'll have wear inside your gas tube, and just overall his grooves were pretty much shot out. Whenever, you know, in the past he didn't have that problem. So, you know, remember, the barrel is a replaceable item. You know, there's great barrel manufacturers out there. MAV was running Criterion barrels, which is a really great barrel company, highly recommended. I run Roscoe Manufacturing barrels. We actually have the Barrel and Hatchet 16-inch intermediate gas length barrel. Did a video on that barrel specifically a few videos back, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially with your gun that you run all the time. Now, one of the things that you end up having is when you run a gun suppressed all the time, understand that's going to cause higher wear and tear on your parts because you have higher pressures being exposed to that gun. So that's fine. It's just going to be a lot dirtier and it's going to have a lot more, wear and tear. So it's just something to keep an eye out. Just checking your parts more regularly, looking for wear and tear, inspecting things before you go do a training day. Definitely inspect things before you go do a class. But these are just some common items that I like to keep an eye on, especially when I'm, as a shooter. Like, that's what I look for. That's part of my regimen, and that's something that you should do, especially if you're starting to get into training and shooting quite a bit. Now, what is the purpose of doing these Rate My Build episodes? I've done a couple now, and so I kind of want to talk to you guys about my thought process behind the Rate My Build. And the reason why I'm doing it is, on YouTube, we only see YouTube celebrities' guns and personalities' guns and things of that nature. And I wanted to give an opportunity to allow, all of you the opportunity to, come and debut your build and talk us through your build and what you like to do in terms of your training regimen and why you have certain setups. And what's really cool about that, especially if you do in the comment section where you guys list out your different parts, is it gives people ideas and it shows them some fresh ideas about how they can build their next build, or maybe there's something about their build that they didn't think about that you thought about. And so this is what the purpose of Rate My Build is supposed to do. It's supposed to kickstart that creative thought when it comes to all of our setups, and then find the one that works best for you. And it's also just a really cool way to help inspire and build ideas, amongst each other. So that's my purpose for doing Rate My Builds. Still enjoy these videos. With the Rate My Builds, I'll do more of them, and it really is an awesome time. And so I want to give a special thanks to MAV for coming out and doing a Rate My Build episode with me. And I really want to also talk to you guys about looking at the details and why the details matter. And I'm going to read a story to you. And in this story, it's in John chapter 6. And there have been multiple times where Jesus has fed the 5,000. Now, you may have heard this story in Sunday school, but there are multiple events where he's done this, and also multiple perspectives when you read in the New Testament about it. But even if you're not, a Christian or something like that, I would really love for you to stay to hear this story because it's really cool. And it says, after this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" Now Jesus said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" And what really strikes me about that, and this is an important lesson that I think that we can all glean from this, this story, and I'm going to continue reading on, but I really want to hit on a couple of points. One is Jesus has compassion. He has compassion for the people who come to him that are sick and that are needy, and he encourages us to have that same heart of compassion for people in our lives. There sometimes might be people in your life, or you yourself may be going through a rough time, and being compassionate towards people who are really just having a hard time or going through a really bad trial, it can mean the world to them. God can use you in big ways just by you lending an ear or you having compassion for somebody and helping them out. And so Jesus has compassion on these people who are sick and want healing, and they are looking to be, whether they're sick or they have an ailment or they're paralyzed or blind, and he, obviously is a healer, and he's God. And so they go up to him looking for healing. And not only does he heal them and send them on their way, but he also says, I'm going to feed them, you know? And so when he asks around to his disciples saying, how are we going to eat? How are they going to feed? I'm just imagining the disciples like, what do you mean? I don't know how to feed these people. Like, you know, they're probably panicking and freaking out. And I imagine there's a small boy standing by them, watching all of this debacle happen and this commotion happen amongst the disciples, and Jesus is quietly sitting there and just looking. And this isn't scriptural, you know, this is just me kind of adding a little bit of color to it with my imagination by reading the text. And I'm just imagining this little boy coming up and saying, hey, I have some, fully not even like considering that it was definitely not enough. And it's so typical of a kid, you know, kids want to help out. I've got kids and think about like, oh yeah, Dad, I want to help you. And it's like, well, this is, you know, really heavy and I'm doing car work, or I'm doing stuff around the house, or I'm doing woodwork or whatever, or I'm on the range. And obviously they can't help. But just that compassion of a child wanting to help the situation, and he offers up his own food. And I imagine Jesus looking at that boy with such pride and such compassion for that little boy, willing to give up his food to help feed these people. And God takes that little bit of food, but that massive amount of faith that that little boy had, and uses it to feed thousands and thousands of people, and also show his disciples his power through his compassion and the miracle that he utilized by taking something small and using it for something big. Now Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, so also the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they had eaten their fill, now I want you to go back real quick. It says, Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. Jesus did. Jesus is the one who distributed the food out to the people. The King of the universe, the God, the Creator, came down to earth, and he was serving people. He was a waiter, a waiter and the cook, and he was serving people. And God calls us to have a heart like his, which is a heart of someone who serves others, puts other people before himself. And going back to verse 12, it says, when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, gather up the leftover fragments that nothing may be lost. So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets, 12 disciples, with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. And when the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, this is indeed the prophet who has come into the world. They saw him as a prophet, not knowing fully yet that he was the Son of God. He was God himself, their Savior. Perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. And so we see how God didn't come to rule over the earth as a king with an iron sword and a scepter and physically rule over people. He will come back to rule and to reign. But he came back to save. He came back to serve and to save people. And they tried to, you know, they were like, let's make him a king. And so he knew that they were going to do that. So he retreated to the mountain and hid until the crowd left. But this is one of those things where I think about my life, and sometimes I'm like, Lord, you know, there's so many people in need in the world. What can I really do? You know, what can I really affect? It's out of my control. I've told myself that a lot, and I've also heard that a lot. It's like, well, what can I really do? And God will take that small thing that you offer, and he'll use it for something so massive that it will send ripples throughout the universe. The miracles and the lives that he will save and heal through you because of your obedience, we can't even perceive it. It's insane. Like, I bet you that boy did not know that he was going to be using his lunch to feed thousands of people. But God knew it. And what that boy did is he acted with compassion and offered up what he had. And you know, this is actually, right, this video is being released around the Christmas season, and there's a lot of people out there who don't have much. But I've been around the world. I've been privileged to be, you know, able to go to different countries, and I've seen people who had nothing that offered me, you know, food or offered me a gift. And you know, this family's super poor, and it's just the weight of that gift is so heavy and so immense that it really just, it leaves a lasting impression on me that I will share with my kids, I'll share with my friends and my family, and that will also affect how I give to others. And so I think it's great, especially this Christmas season, to look at that lesson and to focus on that little boy who helped feed the 5,000 through his compassion and through his obedience, where he offered up his little lunch and used it to affect thousands of people's lives through God. So guys, I hope that you have an amazing, amazing week. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. Sorry for the video mishap here, but I wanted to make sure I got an episode out to you guys this week. And also look for other people whose lives you can affect. Look for somebody who, you know, may need a little bit, doesn't have much. And even if you don't have a lot and you only have a little bit, give what you have. Give what you have to those who are in need, and God will use that to impact so many people's lives. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. My name is Eric, trained to be the eternal asset, and I'll see you on the next one.